California is burning, mostly because of lousy one-party leadership in that state. And the few leaders they do have, well, they're not even in the state. Where's the mayor of Los Angeles? In Ghana? At least she's getting tips on how to really perfect the third world model there in LA. We'll give you all the details of the horrific scenes coming out of Southern California coming up in just a moment. Also, Jim Gaffigan reveals all about what comedians are all telling each other about whether they can or can't make jokes about Democrats. Everything you thought you knew is true about how comedians talk with each other about this stuff. We'll give you the latest on that. Also, oh God, this horrific story out of Great Britain with the rape gangs and everything. You're going to see the story of a father and what the police did to him for trying to save his daughter. And finally, John Fetterman, the voice of reason in the Democratic Party. I never thought I'd say that, but boy, he did it again yesterday, and you'll see every detail coming up right now. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. I'm Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. You can call me Larry. It's the name of the show. Didn't you see it? Larry, thanks for watching. Thanks for liking and subscribing and checking out our live stream. And if you're watching us after the fact, we appreciate that. In fact, I'm told that a lot of you are listening to our audio only podcast. You can get it at Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your audio onlys. You know what? If you could leave us a rating and a review, that would be huge. All of you who are listening on the download. And if you could subscribe to that audio only podcast, that's pretty cool to have with you wherever you are. Increased tariffs on our trade partners, tax cuts, regulation changes. Learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever. Birch Gold, the only gold company I endorse, is releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era, and it's got a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. To get your free copy along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, text my name, Larry, to 989898. Here are the facts. The national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt continue to increase. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar, and Birch Gold is still the company I recommend to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. Text Larry, Larry, to 989898. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. There's no obligation, only information. And I love endorsing Birch Gold because they've got an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Thousands of happy customers. You too can turn to Birch Gold. Text Larry to the number 989898. Do it today. You know, I lived in Southern California for several decades. My children, well, 3 of them still live in Southern California. I used to broadcast a talk radio station on KABC in Southern California. I know my way around the place. And when I see the scenes that we've seen for the last 24 hours coming from 3 distinct fires, Pacific Palisades, which is right between Santa Monica and Malibu, and then Silmar, which is north of Burbank and north of downtown Los Angeles, and then in the Altadena, Pasadena area, which is sort of northeast of Los Angeles. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I know that most of these fires and most of the spread of these fires are the result and responsibility of failed leadership, failed one-party rule in that state. But then adding insult to injury, if you were tuning in to the live coverage last night in Los Angeles, the local Fox 11 station, they revealed something about the mayor of that fair town, which is absolutely maddening.
If you're wondering where is LA Mayor Karen Bass, she's been in Ghana. So she's apparently on her way back. That's why we have not seen her on the scene. We saw Governor Newsom at the scene earlier. We know that President Biden happens to be in town, but we have not seen him on camera with all of this.
Yeah, you usually get your photo op, right, of the governor. Newsom shows up and he literally has his hands in his pockets, his hands in the back pockets. Who does that? Who stands with their hands in the back pockets of their jeans? Gavin Newsom does. Something wrong with that guy. But you usually get the photo op, right? The mayor shows up and puts on a windbreaker with the logo of a first responder there or something, and maybe one of the hats, and gives the press conference as if they're hands-on and doing something to stop the fire, which of course we know they're not. But it's still part of leadership to be there, to be on the scene. And where is she? She's in Ghana. She's in Ghana. Karen Bass used to be a member of Congress. She sat on the Foreign Relations Committee, and I guess she's more interested in what's going on in Ghana than she is in Los Angeles. But let's face it, Los Angeles is a borderline third world nation right now. So I guess she's getting tips over there in Ghana how to bring it over the finish line and be officially 100% third world. It's despicable. Listen, it is failed leadership that's responsible for a lot of what goes on here. When I covered the latest round of fires back in 2019 in Southern California, a good chunk of the fires were all started in so-called homeless encampments. That's what they call them. These are criminal vagrants who are allowed to live wherever they want. And a lot of them live in the forests around Santa Monica, in the hills right off of Malibu. They have campfires to cook their food and to keep themselves warm. And a lot of those encampments, homeless people, as Gavin Newsom calls them, are unhoused neighbors. They're criminal vagrants and they're breaking the law. And if you enforce the laws in that state, it wouldn't happen anymore. Instead, they allow it to happen, and so it increases. It's amazing how when you don't enforce the law, more of the criminal activity continues. So they have these campfires trying to keep themselves warm, trying to cook their food. They also have propane tanks in their little encampments there. One thing leads to another. The wind blows, something catches on fire, and boom. Now, we don't know that that's how any of these fires started. I would not be surprised, though, especially seeing the Palisades fire started in those hills, in those forests, just north of Santa Monica, where there's a huge number, just above the Brentwood and Westwood lines. They've got a huge number of criminal vagrants living in their so-called encampments. Let's turn to the Palisades. Palisades is an incredibly wealthy community. And those houses, it's basically a blazing inferno right now.
My heart goes out, obviously, to the people with their homes, and I'm watching the small businesses around us go up in flames. This is people's livelihoods, so it's devastating. But what is most concerning to me is our first responders and our firefighters who are trying to battle this. There's no water in the Palisades. There's no water coming out of the fire hydrants. This is an absolute mismanagement by the city. It's not the firefighters' fault, but it's by the city. And I'm going to be very honest. We've got a mayor that's out of the country.
Let me pause here for a second just so I can give you context on this person who's calling in. His name is Rick Caruso. He's a real estate developer in Los Angeles. He just ran for mayor against Karen Bass. Did he just run for mayor, or he's flirting with the idea of running for mayor? I'm sorry, I'm sort of out of touch with LA politics recently, but they're calling on him to run for mayor, and so he called in here to sort of hammer home the failed leadership. And you heard about the lack of water. I'll get into that in just a moment, but let's get back to Mr. Caruso here.
And we've got a city that's burning, and there's no resources to put out fires. So if you look at your pictures, you don't see the firefighters there because there's nothing they can do. And it looks like we're in a third world country here. Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of tough questions that we need to ask the mayor and the city council and our representatives and the county representatives. Why didn't you work to mitigate this? What was your brush mitigation program? I heard you earlier talking about it's been dry because there hasn't been rain. That's not the biggest problem here. The brush up in these hills that are controlled by the city and the county, I would bet you that if they haven't been handled, mitigated, pruned, removed for probably 30 or 40 years. This was a disaster waiting to happen. And what's predictable is preventable. And who's paying the price are all of these people in their homes and their businesses tonight. Now, we'll rebuild. But the majority of this community is going to have a tough time rebuilding their lives.
That's right. Rick Caruso did, in fact, run for mayor last time around, lost to Karen Bass. He's still open to running for mayor again, he has said. He's right about mitigation policies with regard to dried brush and dead brush. We're told by environmentalists that you shouldn't do that. By the way, if you're a homeowner and you don't do that, you get fined. But if it's in city or county property or state property, it's fine. We'll just turn away. Also, you heard about the lack of water. And you're going to hear from people, it's a drought condition. Let me tell you something. We live in Southern California. You either have drought conditions, you have the Santa Ana winds, which is making these fires spread even faster and make the flames as big as you saw, 2-story houses, or you have floods. Remember when we were talking about the mudslides in Santa Barbara and Simi Valley, the mudslides in Laguna Beach and Dana Point because of all of the rain? This is what happens in Southern California. And it's not because of climate change, because this has been happening for ever, literally. No, I'm serious. I mean, they can tell forensically or geologically, they can tell when there were forest fires. There were forest fires hundreds of years ago in Southern California. This is not because of carbon monoxide emissions or carbon dioxide emissions and greenhouse gases and all of that crap. Don't buy into that stuff. But they have all of these storms and all of these rains, and we have mudslides and water is running everything, and the erosion is ruining houses who are slipping into the ocean and all that. And not once did the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, or the state of California think to themselves, hey, let's build a reservoir and capture the water. So next time we have a drought, we've got water that we've stored from all these rains. Not once, because, that would be anti-environmental. So we can't do that. There's been no forethought, no policies. Oh, let's hire some people to go in and clear out all of the brush and all of the dead wood. So if we have a fire, oh, we can't afford that. Hey, how about all the homeless people who are living there right now? Here's what you do. You say, hey, homeless people who are living here right now, you either put on an orange vest and pick up all of the dead wood here, or you're going to jail. How's that for a deal? It's amazing how you'll immediately recruit people to go and do that job. Karen Bass is not just a disaster because she went to Ghana and left the country while all of this is going on. Her 2025 budget has been put forth, and in it, she proposed to cut the budget for the Los Angeles Fire Department by over $17 million. By over $17 million. Now, I understand she's, cash is tight. You're not getting all those big checks from Joe Biden to bail you out because of your COVID policies anymore. And people are leaving that state, that county, and that city in droves. So your tax revenue is drying up. But maybe, just maybe, when you live in a desert, arid community where you've got, the propensity for fires, maybe you shouldn't propose cutting $17.6 million from that budget. By the way, animal services was only going to get cut by $1 million. That's pretty amazing. Street lighting, $5 million. Incredible. Thank you, Greg Price, for those details. That's part of the problem. Also, when they hired their new police chief in Los Angeles to steer things and to inspire new firefighters to be recruited and come and join the Los Angeles Fire Department, LA Fire Department, which is on the front lines of the Palisades fire right now. Now, the other two fires, those are in the county of Los Angeles, not in the city proper. But of course, LA Fire Department personnel are deployed to help shore up LA County Fire and the local cities there as well. But the real bad fire is LA City. That's the Palisades. And who leads the LA Fire Department right now? Who leads LAFD? And has she prioritized recruiting people to come and fight fires because they're the best, most capable people to fight fires? No, this is the woman who now is the fire chief. And let's check in on what her priorities are.
I'm super inspired.
She took time out of her already busy schedule to tell us about her vision for the department's future, one that includes a 3-year strategic plan to increase diversity.
People ask me, well, what number are you looking for? I said, I'm not looking for a number. It's never enough.
Out of 3,300 city firefighters, only 115 are women right now. She's already looking at ways to change that. She's quick to point out that doing so has a greater purpose, attracting the best and brightest for the job.
Can I just say something? I'm gonna let you finish watching this LGBTQIA plus DEI fire chief, where all of those letters don't really come in handy when the city is burning down to a crisp. And you've repelled badass dudes who would love to become firefighters, but you've already projected to the world that your main priority is inclusiveness to make sure you get there is something wrong with you if you see an image like this and you think to yourself, oh, I sure hope it's a lesbian fighting that fire. Oh, it sure would be a shame if it was just a white dude fighting that fire. And I don't know who's out there all dressed up and risking their lives to save that home and save the people who live in that home. But boy, oh boy, I sure hope it's a transgender Latina. Or is it Latinx? I've lost track of that one. There is something warped in your mind if that's your focus, if that's all you care about. But if you follow the actual public pronouncements of the chief of the fire department in Los Angeles, that is, in fact, the number one priority.
They feel included, they feel valued, and they feel part of a cohesive team.
The chief also checks another box when it comes to inclusivity and diversity at this department. She's a proud member of the LGBTQ community.
That just kind of opens the door of people that thought, wow, I didn't even know that was an opportunity for me.
Yeah. Because, the LA Fire Department is all about opportunity for people. I love the reporter there for the local NBC station, literally says, checks a box. She checks another box, everybody. When that's your priority, then you have problems with recruitment. You have problems prioritizing and spending your budgets on things like, personnel and making sure that you've got the right equipment to be able to fight fires. And instead, you put all of your money into DEI programs to help get certain kind of people recruited into the fire department. And then the next thing you know, Pacific Palisades is burning to the ground, and you don't have enough firefighters to do the job. Here is your LA Fire Department police chief, the Grand Marshal. With George Takei as well. Grand Marshal of the Pride Parade with the mayor and with all these celebrities, because they got the rainbow flags and she's in uniform. And look at, wow, tens of people came out for this parade in Los Angeles. And it's something to be really proud of. See, this is the thing. LA is super proud that this is their fire chief. Now, at the same time, the Pacific Palisades is going to be left in an ashen heap with nothing but rubble. People will die. People will be burned beyond recognition. People will lose their homes and lose their businesses. It'll cost billions of dollars. But at least you got this. At least you got your LGBTQIA++ fire chief. What does this DEI stuff really look like in personal terms? Well, believe it or not, radio host, television personality, comedian, writer, podcaster Adam Carolla faced this many years ago. This is nothing new, sadly, in Los Angeles. He was a kid just out of high school. He wanted to get a job at the fire department, and he's like 6'5" and kind of a big dude, and that would be the right job for him. So he tells his story about back before they called it DEI, but it was still the same old insidious Marxism. This is what happened with Adam Carolla when he tried to join the LAFD back then.
Geez, I want to talk about my white privilege so badly. I graduated North Hollywood High with a 1.7 GPA. I could not find a job. I walked to a fire station in North Hollywood. I was 19. I was living in the garage of my family home. My mom was on welfare and food stamps. And I said, can I get a job as a fireman? And they said, no, because you're not Black, Hispanic, or a woman. We'll see in about 7 years. And I went to a construction site and dug ditches and picked up garbage for the next 7 years. I got a letter in the mail sent to my father's house saying, your time has come to do the written exam for the LA Fire Department. I took it, and I was standing in line, and I had a young woman of color standing behind me in line. And I said, just out of curiosity, when did you sign up to become a fireman? Because I did it, or a person, 7 years ago. And she said, Wednesday. That is an example of my white privilege.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I appreciate Carolla making it. Let's just be clear here. This is failed policy. Fires are going to happen. Everybody knows that. There have been rampaging wildfires in Southern California for decades and decades and decades. And for Gavin Newsom to come out, and any Democrat, Joe Biden, whoever it is, saying, well, this is climate change, this is climate change. I don't care if you actually cut off every single internal combustion engine in the entire nation, in the entire planet. You're not going to make a difference in fires in Southern California. You're just not. That's absolute and total bullshit. And everybody knows it. It's an excuse. It's an excuse. They use these fires as a political weapon against Republicans. Basically, when they say, oh, this is climate change, but we're not getting any leadership on climate change, what they're doing is saying this is Republicans' fault, which is laughable because Republicans run nothing in California. It's all run by Democrats. It's one-party rule. It's the arrogance of knowing that you can be in Ghana when your city is burning down and you'll still win re-election because it's one-party rule. It's the arrogance of knowing that you're Gavin Newsom and you can have these fires your entire time in 2 terms as governor and 2 terms as lieutenant governor, and you do nothing significant about it to prevent it, to prepare for it, to build reservoirs to capture water from the torrential rains that you get so that you can forego the drought season and actually have water in reserve, you can't do any of that. You can make every bad decision if you're Gavin Newsom, and not only will you get reelected, but you can then launch a presidential run for the White House, and the media will be just fine with it because it's the arrogance of one party rule when you know that you're not going to be held accountable by anybody. This is why Kamala Harris had such a tough time running on the national stage, because up until that point, she'd never actually had to deal with either challenging questions from the media or debating an actual Republican with a brain. That's why they try to protect her right up until her White House run. This is a combination of that arrogance. It's the combination of allowing criminal vagrants to encamp in areas that are combustible and do nothing about it. They've been living and parking on the street in their RVs. They've got propane tanks. They set up fires outside in an arid area. We don't know what caused these fires, but I can tell you from experience that past fires, very recent fires in 2019, were started that way. And they still do nothing about it. Donald Trump, when he was president of the United States, visited the state of California during 2019 and said, listen, we're going to give you federal assistance, but if you don't do something to come in and clear out this brush and actually get rid of the fuel that's making these wildfires as giant and as deadly as they've been, we're going to have to cut you off. He was right. And Gavin Newsom and the Democrats and the propaganda media, they went after Trump for that, when he was objectively correct about it. There is nothing. There is absolutely nothing. You go ahead and ask them. Ask the mayor of Los Angeles when she returns from Ghana. Ask the county supervisors in LA County. Ask Governor Newsom and all of the Democrats that run everything in Sacramento. What tangible thing have you done to prevent these fires from happening and to put these fires out when they do happen? And all they'll say is climate change. All they will say is climate change. And the voters of California will continue to buy it. But you know what? I don't want to just leave this with the state of California and the dysfunctional mess they have because of the Democrats. What about this guy, Joe Biden? I want you to remember what he had to say 4 years ago when he was running for president. He actually tried to blame Donald Trump for the forest fires in California that year. And he said, basically, if you elect Joe Biden, those forest fires will stop.
Trump's climate denial may not have caused these fires and record floods and record hurricanes. But if he gets a second term, these hellish events will continue to become more common, more devastating, and more deadly. And meanwhile, Donald Trump warns that integration is threatening our suburbs. It's ridiculous.
I'm going to let him finish, but just understand what he's doing here. First of all, fear-mongering that, Donald Trump and climate change is what's causing these fires. And if he gets 4 more years, they'll become more commonplace, which is the same as saying, if you elect me, then we'll reverse these fires, number one. But number two, I like the immigration thing. Donald Trump is telling you that immigration is threatening the suburbs. Yeah. It's funny. We just passed in the House yesterday the Laken Riley Act. Laken Riley, a young lady from the suburbs, down in Georgia, who was assaulted and murdered by an illegal alien criminal. Can we say it all together? Trump was right again. And this guy, fear-mongering his way into the White House during the 2020 presidential election, was wrong about everything. Just watch. There's more.
But you know what is actually threatening our suburbs? Wildfires are burning the suburbs in the West. Floods are wiping out suburban neighborhoods in the Midwest. Hurricanes are imperiling suburban life along our coast. If we have 4 more years of Trump's climate denial, how many suburbs will be burned in wildfires? How many suburban neighborhoods will have been flooded out? How many suburbs will have been blown away in superstorms? If you give a climate arsonist 4 more years in the White House, why would anyone be surprised if we have more America ablaze?
A climate arsonist, he called Donald Trump. Well, okay, dude, you got your way. You scared everybody into thinking that if Donald Trump were president for 4 more years, our towns were going to burn in an arson because of climate change. You got your way, and you got to pass your big Green New Deal climate change bill that you called the Inflation Reduction Act, but we know what it really was. You got everything you wanted. And take a look at Los Angeles right now. Can we stop with all of this now? Can we stop with the climate change bullshit and actually be real about fixing the problem? No, we can't. As long as Democrats can raise money and get attention by claiming that all of this is because of climate change, no one will actually fix the problem in California. And this is going to continue and continue and continue until Gavin Newsom's president. Breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I know people in Southern California, people's homes that were threatened by these fires. I'm going to be there this weekend and I'm going to see it for myself. And it's absolutely terrifying. One lighthearted moment, actually, that it's hard to point at, considering how severe and serious all of this was. But there's another thing you should know about the Pacific Palisades in Malibu. It's where a lot of people from the movie industry live. A lot of actors, a lot of writers and directors and producers and just, people who have made it big. They end up living in the Palisades. They end up retiring in the Palisades, actually, even if they're not making movies much anymore. And well, that brings us to this pretty cool moment on KTLA Channel 5 when this reporter was interviewing random residents on the street about what was going on. Watch. Familiar to him. It's Steve Guttenberg. What is wrong with this generation? You Zoomers don't know who Steve Guttenberg is? Have you never seen Police Academy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I think he did a 6, 7, and 8 too. All the Police Academy movies. You should binge them this weekend and educate yourself. What about 3 Men and a Baby? What about Cocoon? What about Short Circuit? That may have been the last one. He was upstaged by a robot. That wasn't good. It's Steve Guttenberg, this reporter claiming that he recognizes him. Watch what happens here, okay?
So, sir, Guttenberg.
You're gonna watch this guy when he asks him, "What's your name?" and he says, "I'm Steve Guttenberg." Now watch the reporter because there's a moment he's gonna put his finger in his ear. Actually, for me, it's this here. See how I've got this? See that? See that? I can hear things in my ear right here. He's got one of those. It's an IFB thing. And the producer back in the studio is going to say, "That's Steve Guttenberg, you idiot. He's an actor." So watch him hold his ear.
Yeah.
You look familiar to me now. No, he doesn't. Oh, boy, fame is fleeting, isn't it? One day you're top of the world, raking in millions of dollars for every Police Academy sequel you do. And then the next day, what are you, valet parking there on Palisades Drive and moving people's cars around? I'm kidding, actually. Steve Guttenberg is a good man, and I'm sure he's got plenty of money. He's not a valet parker. He's just a good citizen trying to help out the fire department and move those cars. And I'll tell you what, he's doing more for that neighborhood than the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, is doing. In fact, you want to fix things? How about Steve Guttenberg for mayor? I mean, after all, he has plenty of years of experience as a cop. That would be a Police Academy reference there. Police Academy. By the way, I got to be honest. Kevin McMahon, our fantastic producer, had no idea who Stephen Guttenberg was. Admit it, Kevin.
Hold on, my earpiece is telling me that he's an actor.
There you go. Yeah, now you recognize him, don't you? Unbelievable. I'm sure you've seen in Great Britain these horrible stories where there have been gangs sexually assaulting young women there. And as if that's not bad enough, the people who are trying to save their children, who are speaking out about it, using social media to warn, they're the ones who are being punished. And the government in England are basically hands off this whole thing and allowing these atrocities to happen, or have allowed these atrocities to happen, because of cultural sensibility. Yeah, see, I don't know. Maybe it's me, but if you think that it's just a cultural norm for certain races or religions or ethnicities to go around in gangs marauding and sexually assaulting young girls like juvenile children, maybe you're the one who's racist if you think that's a cultural norm. Oh, you know how those people are. That's just what they're going to do. Okay, you're the racist, pal. And you're shutting up normal people who are trying to stop these atrocities from happening under the guise of racism. Well, take a look at this harrowing story out of GB News, where a father talks about how he was arrested when he attempted to save his own daughter from one of these hellish scenes.
Jack, your daughter was being abused by gangs and the police were doing nothing, but they did come for you. What happened when you tried to save her from an abuse den?
I was arrested outside, put in police car, taken away. We lived up next estate, so as we were passing, the stopped car told me that I would be arrested, to go in the house and don't go back. I was that mad and furious. I went back to the flat. Within a few minutes, police were back, but this time in a van, and it were only a few minutes. So there must have been some on the street waiting, because they must have known I was going back.
So they were watching this flat where your daughter was being abused. They weren't going in to save her, but they did go in to arrest you twice.
Yeah, they arrested me second time, took me down to the police station, kept me in there. About an hour and a half later, they come into, because they didn't put me in a cell, they put me in a room. They took me out of the room, took me out through the police station, into the front bit with public, go to report crimes. Took me outside and said, right, go home, because if you go back to that flat, we're going to arrest you for stalking. And I don't know if you know or not, but there's serious new stalking laws coming, and we'll arrest you for stalking the occupants of that house.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
His daughter was in the house. His daughter was in the house and being subjected to horrific violence at the hands of these gangs. And the police warned him that he had to get away because of stalking laws. Stalking laws. This thing has been exploding over in Great Britain and the United Kingdom. Elon Musk has been drawing a lot of attention to it. And again, the people in charge, the government, have finally acknowledged that this has happened, including the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, head of the left-wing Liberal Party. But watch this extraordinary exchange in the House of Commons. You know, you've seen questions for the Prime Minister, right? It's fantastic. I love it. We should do something like this here in the U.S., where the Conservative Party leader has basically said, we need a full public inquiry about this, a total transparency. What did the government know, and when did they know it about these horrific crimes, and what did they do to either stop them, or did you cover it up? Now watch what the Prime Minister says, because the last thing he wants, apparently, is an inquiry into this thing.
The Prime Minister is being very specific, because I have raised this issue. I've raised it in speeches. I've raised it publicly. He knows that as a minister, I would not have been speaking on this specific issue. I was not a Home Office minister, but Mr. Speaker, I will remind him about other victims who came to me, who I did help. The victims of the Tavistock scandal, who came to me as a minister. I didn't send them away like his safeguarding minister. I made sure, as his Labour Party were calling me transphobic, that we launched the CAS review, which even his health secretary has accepted. So we do right by victims, Mr. Speaker. The reason why a national inquiry is important is because this issue is systemic. It has been involving local and national officials, the police, prosecutors, and politicians. He talks about some of the local inquiries, but these interlinked issues cannot be covered by local inquiries alone. In fact, the leaders of the Manchester inquiry resigned because they couldn't get evidence, they couldn't summon witnesses, and not a single person in a position of authority has been held to account. The Prime Minister called for 9 inquiries in the last Parliament. Does he not see that by resisting this one, people will start to worry about a cover-up?
Mr. Speaker, this is an important issue, and we have to focus on the victims and survivors. And it isn't helpful. This sort of lies and misinformation and slinging of mud doesn't help them one bit. Mr. Speaker, she raised a question of a victim with me, quite right to, and I accept that victims and survivors are in different places on this. those that I've spoken to are worried about the delay of a further inquiry. The last inquiry took 7 years. That would take us to 2031. Now, these inquiries, amongst the issues that's been raised with me, and she's been speaking to victims, they'll have raised this with her, is that it's very hard for victims and survivors to come forward to explain what's happened to them. They do not want to be rushed through this process, which is why the last one took 7 years. It's not sensible to suggest that this can be done in a hurry, on the cheap, and comprehensively. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, that would take us to, let's say, 2030, 2031. The victims that I've spoken to want action today. I agree with them on that. But what I don't understand, I genuinely don't understand, is why anybody today would vote against the Children Wellbeing Bill, which will protect children who are vulnerable today. It will kill the bill.
All right, so let me just explain to you what his argument here is. We can't have a full inquiry into the government's actions in this because it will take too long. It could take 6 or 7 years. Last time we had an inquiry like this. By the way, the fact that there's a last time is kind of part of the problem here, pal. Our government is so inefficient and our bureaucracy drags its feet so much in issues like this that it'll just take too long. So what's the point of being transparent and having an inquiry and an investigation at all? This is a man who has something to hide. This is a man who is covering up. This is a man who's part of a problem. You see something like this horrific, they're all saying grooming gangs, which is an odd way of putting it. These are gangs that sexually assaulted people. I think that there's a stigma about using the R word, and the R word gets censored on a lot of platforms if you use the R word, but we know what's going on here. And these are children, literal children, juveniles, minors. And the parents and the kids, their lives are shattered. And here's this cold-hearted, cold-blooded, distant and aloof British Prime Minister who says, and transparency is absolutely the wrong path to go here, and an investigation will take too long. So let's just move along, shall we? This is my favorite meme that I've seen about it right now. It is funny, but it's actually tragic. This brings to mind, actually, the late, great Christopher Hitchens. And listen, I know he was an odious atheist and an individual that was so just blasphemous and negative about Christianity and God and religion and faith. And I still pray. His brother is the opposite. His brother is amazing and is a Christian convert and is incredible. I pray for Christopher Hitchens because he was such a brilliant intellect. And on this issue in particular, on the immigration issue in England, and about the crimes that were being done back in 2009, perpetrated by criminal gangs. And if you spoke out, you were immediately called racist, insensitive, Islamophobic. And he warned then the people of Great Britain, don't let this happen. Don't let them steal the language. Don't let them bully you and intimidate you into silence by calling you names. And somebody put together this video showing what he had to say then, and then what the Prime Minister Keir Starmer is saying right now, today, about this very issue. And you'll see exactly how right Christopher Hitchens was, tragically right.
Give it up or give it to your deadliest enemy and pay for the rope that will choke you. This is very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen. I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing. You will be told you can't complain because you're Islamophobic. The term is already being introduced into the culture as if it was an accusation of race hatred, for example, or bigotry, whereas it's only the objection to the preachings of a very extreme and absolutist religion. Watch out for these symptoms. They are not just symptoms of surrender, very often ecumenically offered to you by men of God in other robes, Christian and Jewish and smarmy ecumenical. These are the ones who will hold open the gates for the barbarians. The barbarians never take a city till someone holds the gates open for them. And it's your own preachers who will do it for you, and your own multicultural authorities who will do it for you. Resist it while you can. And if you wonder what will happen if you don't, look and see how a cricket team in Middlesex in England had to change its name by force last week because it was called, and had been for years, the Middlesex Crusaders. Look and see how stories about little pigs can't be taught to children in English schools anymore, lest offense be taken by the religion of peace. Resist it while you can.
One of the things that is coming up over and over again is Islamophobia. And, well, you can see the stats, you can see the numbers rising, particularly since October the 7th. Although we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that before October the 7th, this was all heading in the right direction. It's been far too high for far too long. Clearly, we need to just say over and over again, Islamophobia is intolerable. It can never, ever be justified. And we have to continue with a zero tolerance approach. And I think there's more we can do in government. There's certainly stuff online, which I think needs tackling much more robustly than it is at the moment.
What I'm hoping, Kerry, is your experience as a prosecutor means you'll be thinking about the strategy we can use to make sure we take action against those who break the law.
Yeah. Use your experience as a prosecutor to take action against those who break the law, not the law against sexual assault and kidnapping and horrific crimes against young girls. No. The crime of Islamophobia, the crime of hate speech, the crime of hate thought, the crime of sharing your opinion on social media. Christopher Hitchens was tragically right. And this is what's going on in England right now, where the arrests that are being made, as you saw from that father, the arrests are the parents, the fathers trying to save their daughters. And the law is set up right now to protect the actual perpetrators of these horrific crimes. We bring this to your attention because it's very real. It's very relevant. It's happening right now with our cousins over across the pond in England. But this is also a warning for those of us here in North America. And I'm including not just everyone here in the United States, but also our brothers and sisters in our 51st state, Canada. We're next. Is it possible that John Fetterman has done it again? The senator from Pennsylvania seems to be the sole voice of reason in the Democratic Party, and he appeared with Alabama Senator Republican Katie Britt, a bipartisan appearance on Bret Baier's special report on Fox News, and we've got 3 major tidbits from him that show that he actually seems to be the most reasonable man in the room, despite his creative choice of wardrobe.
Like, it's really common sense. And I'd like to remind everybody that we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of migrants here illegally that have convicted of crimes.
So what they're talking about here is the Laken-Riley bill. This was a bill that passed the House with 159 Democrats voting against it. What did the bill say? It's in Laken-Riley's name. She's the young woman who was murdered by a Venezuelan criminal illegal immigrant who had a run-in with the law when he was up in New York. He was arrested for theft. He was let go, and then he was able to go down to Georgia and perpetrate that horrible murder against Laken-Riley. So this bill is very specific. It says if you're in the country illegally and you break the law, then you're dealt with. You're dealt with by the federal authorities. And even more importantly, if you are a local elected official, a local jurisdiction, and you have pushed sanctuary policies that protect these criminals, then you are eligible for being sued by the victim's family. That's a really good idea. That's a really good law. 159 Democrats voted against it. Here's John Fetterman. He is actually co-sponsoring the bill in the Senate because he thinks it's a good idea too.
And why, I don't know why, who wants to defend that, to allow them to remain in our nation? That. And now if you're here illegally and you're committing crimes and those things, I don't know why anybody thinks that it's controversial that they all need to go.
Do you think that this was one of, if not the biggest issue for this election?
Well, I think if we can't, there's 47 of us in the Senate, and if we can't pull up with 7 votes, if we can't get at least 7 out of 47, and if we can't, then that's the reason why we lost. That's one of them. That's one of why we lost.
Yeah, that's right. He gets it. He understands. I mean, listen, I'm a Republican. I don't want the Democrats to get it. I want the Democrats to continue walking down the path of ignorance and continue to lose elections. But at the same time, I would like to get some good things done in this country. And if it takes 60 votes, I would like, just like John Fetterman, I would like at least 7 Democrats to understand this and vote with Republicans. So this is a bill that could be sitting on Donald Trump's desk on day one. So Donald Trump on day one, which is what, 10 days from now, 11 days from now, he's going to do a whole lot of executive orders, just like Joe Biden did. And his executive orders will, for the most part, reverse what Biden did and put things back on path, Keystone Pipeline and securing the border and catch and release and drill, baby, drill and stuff like that. But wouldn't it be beautiful if Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, and John Thune, the majority leader in the Senate, if they could actually work on some bills like this one? Like, the House has done their job. They've passed it. It's in the Senate's hands. John Thune, what are you waiting for? Pass this thing in the Senate now, put the Democrats on their heels, force them to go on the record, like John Fetterman, that you're okay with illegal aliens committing crimes and then staying in this country so they can go ahead and murder the next Laken Riley. Put them on the spot and make them vote on this right now. And if you can pass it in the Senate, wouldn't it be a beautiful thing? And show the entire nation that Republicans are really good at governing and getting crap done. That when Donald Trump walks down Pennsylvania Avenue after getting sworn in at the Capitol and he enters his office in the White House, that he can sit down and actually sign a bill into law, because Congress in these 16 days have actually gotten some crap done. Wouldn't that be great? Now I'm just dreaming. I don't know. I'm kidding myself. All right, Fetterman didn't stop there. He was also asked specifically about everybody freaking out over Donald Trump's statements about Greenland and the Panama Canal. We showed you from the press conference yesterday. We showed you Don Jr. landed in Greenland and all these discussions about Greenland. And of course, everyone's screaming. Their heads are exploding. And I got to love Fetterman's approach to this. Not only is he like, everybody chill. Okay, chill out. Stop freaking out about everything. But also he says, on the face of it, you look at Greenland, I mean, Trump's got a point. Take a look.
Can I talk about like there's a lot of talk about Greenland, for example. Now, and I know there's a lot of freakouts, and of course I would never support taking it by force. But I do think it's a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it and whether just buying it outright. I mean, if anyone think that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana purchase? Oh, I think Alaska was a great deal too. $50 million, I think it was. It was referred to as Seward's Folly, and now that was Alaska now. So, I mean, open to having all kinds of conversations as well. And now I don't think it's not helpful to freak out, but some things might work out, some may not, but that's part of an ongoing dialogue. But he hasn't even taken office in 2 weeks. And, we really need to pace ourselves if we're going to freak out over every last tweet or every last conversation or press conference. But
That's good. That's a good one, John. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, we are here to work together.
Yeah.
And some things you can agree or disagree. But
that's great. I mean, and again, and first of all, I'm glad he's looking at this intelligently and with an eye on history in the past. He's on a purchase. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. But Alaska is the perfect example. They did call it Seward's Folly. This was the 19th century, late 19th century, when Secretary of State Seward made a deal with Russia, purchased the territory that is known as Alaska. They said, what are you doing? What are you buying that for? That's ridiculous. We don't need it. We don't need it. Alaska was huge. They found gold in Alaska. We still drill for oil in Alaska. It's an amazing natural resources with fish, freshwater fishing. That's unbelievable. And the beauty of it, and may I also say, and I'll say it again, manifest destiny. Look it up. I don't know where America lost its mojo when we were astride the world. I think that we were intimidated. We were bullied by the pencil neck geeks, smart set intellectuals coming out of graduate school with tweed jackets and elbow patches. After World War II, when we literally saved the entire planet and we showed that we could fight a war, a high-level war on every continent and win, we mastered our industry. We mastered our personnel. We had the leadership in our generals and our military training. And suddenly we stopped. Now, I'm not saying we should conquer things, but in some way we were sort of shamed into this idea at the moment where we had dominance around the world that we shouldn't talk to other nations about, well, would you like to be, a protected territory of the United States of America? Because that would be good for you. It would be good for us. And it would actually help this nation and help the world through world peace. I'm sorry. I know it's a quaint notion, but I think more countries aligned with and connected with the United States of America makes for a more peaceful world and a more functional world. And instead of everybody from these third world nations flooding into our shores, and we get nothing from it other than heartache and headache and draining our accounts and our treasury, how about instead we make alliances with countries where instead of them coming here, we actually make these alliances with country where we can help you out with the things that we do well, and then we can tap some of the resources in your country. It's win-win. And Fetterman gets it. It's very intelligent, actually. I heard recently somebody say that Donald Trump looks at these things as what's mine is mine and what's yours is open for negotiation. And I think that's how America should approach things. God knows it's how China's been approaching things. I also love the fact that Fetterman was like, could we please just stop freaking out over every little tweet and every little utterance? And this is going to be a long 4 years. We're trying to work together. And if you continue to just freak out over every little thing, it's going to be exhausting. We're going to go nuts. He was also asked about Trump's nominees, his cabinet nominees, and a couple of things were revealed here. I want you to listen. I'm going to interrupt this halfway through to point something out because I don't want you to miss it, and then we'll let it play all the way through.
Is Tulsi Gabbard one of the nominees that you could vote for?
Well, I met with her. In fact, I think I've met with virtually all of them. And the ones that I haven't, they're on my schedule, RFK and Governor Noem. So I'm happy to meet with all of them. And that's also part of this. I don't know why that was controversial. I mean, I got a lot of blowback just, even to meet with them. And to me, I see that as just doing my job.
Yeah. So I just want to emphasize this. Think about it. John Fetterman, a Democrat senator from Pennsylvania, has been getting blowback, as he puts it, and that it's been somehow seen as controversial because he's met with Tulsi Gabbard, he's met with Pete Hegseth, he's met with Kash Patel, he's met with the president's nominees. That's literally the Senate's job. The Senate has the advice and consent role in the Constitution to confirm the president's nominees, and Fetterman's getting blowback from his pals in his party and in the media because he's actually talked to the people that he needs to vote on. That's where the Democrats are right now in this town. All right, now we'll let it finish.
And I'm going to have a conversation with anyone that would like to have a conversation with me. And if someone believed everything that's been written or said about me was true, I mean, you can't possibly know me, or I think I could know her either, just based on someone read. But I want to sit down and have a conversation, and I'm really glad that I've done that. And some of these nominees I'm going to vote for already. In fact, whether it's our colleague Rubio, Representative Stefanik, or even Sean Duffy, I expect to vote for him as well too, and Brooke Rollins for agriculture.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of them I can say right now here on Fox. I'm going to vote for them. But then there's others, but that we're going to go through the process. But I'm open to hear from everyone, and I don't know why that's controversial. And I also would like to remind everyone on the Democratic side, that's the way democracy works. Trump won, and now they're going to run the table. And so they get to pick those kinds of people. And if you don't have to agree with all of it, but I want to find a way to work together on a bunch of them.
And I want to.
All right. So what one quibble, it's how a constitutional republic works. It's like Democrats are fixated on this word democracy because I think they think that because they call themselves the Democrat Party, that in some way, if they keep saying we're a democracy, that they have some sort of like grandfathered ownership of our nation, because we're not a democracy. And it's like you can't retrain these people. It's a constitutional republic. That's how whatever. He is right. And by the way, he says, I don't know why this is controversial. It's controversial because the left has lost their collective minds, or what's left of them. Republicans, sadly, don't act this way. Lloyd Austin was confirmed as Joe Biden's Secretary of Defense by a 95-2 vote. 95 votes. You think any of Trump's nominees are going to get 95 votes, even Marco Rubio? Of course not. It's amazing. But I gotta say, I mean, that the Fetterman continues to impress. He continues to speak his mind. He continues to make sense and be logical and be intelligent and actually seem reasonable. I don't see how he lasts as a Democrat with those kind of personality traits. We've talked quite a bit here about the censorship that we see, not just on social media and in the regular legacy media and such, but also in the entertainment business. I used to work in the entertainment business. I know what it's like to be a lone Republican on set. It's not an easy thing. And it's most focused, I think, where we've seen it most focused and highlighted in the world of comedy. Jerry Seinfeld has been great at sort of pointing this out and focusing on the fact that comedians are supposed to be about free speech and they're supposed to be about making fun of everyone. Nobody is a sacred cow. But for some reason, when you tune into Saturday Night Live for the last 4 years, they couldn't find anything funny about Joe Biden. Really? Joe Biden? You couldn't find anything funny about Joe Biden? Well, comedian Jim Gaffigan has seen it up close and personal. And just this week, he appeared on the Last Laugh podcast, and he revealed something rather interesting. Apparently, among comedians, there were conversations about how you just shouldn't tell a joke about Kamala Harris.
What I thought was interesting about this election is, and maybe because it was so important, and maybe because it was such a short election for Kamala, that people were like, don't criticize her. And my whole thing is like, well, that is, and I'm not somebody who's a roast guy, but I'm like, that's actually bad to have that approach.
Yeah.
And I think hindsight, a lot of people feel that
Yeah.
way. But what I thought was
It is bad, right? I mean, he was literally told, don't make fun of Kamala. And it is, it's super bad that happened. By the way, if I could just say to the podcast host there for the Last Laugh, this is a Daily Beast podcast, I think. He needs to get a mixer or something with the levels. What is that? Why is his mic so much louder than Gaffigan?
that's actually bad to have that approach. And I think hindsight, a lot of people feel that way.
Dang, dude, buy a mixer, figure it out, or get a Kevin McMahon to, equalize everything. Anyway, good for Jim Gaffigan to call that out. I want names, though. I want to know who was emailing and texting Jim Gaffigan saying, hey, don't make fun of Kamala. Don't make fun of Kamala. I'm sorry, what do you think your job is? But, this is exactly what we saw on the late night shows. You saw this with Colbert and Fallon and Kimmel, all of them, all except for Greg Gutfeld, of course, who, by the way, made fun of Trump, too. That's the thing. If you're a comedian in America and you can't find humor in every single person who was running for office, who was holding office, get out of the business. For God's sake, they're all worthy of being laughed at. They're hilarious. If you're not laughing, you're crying, right? Now, to remind you who Jim Gaffigan is, he ended up being the MC of the Al Smith dinner. Now, this was the dinner. Every 4 years, they do this in the Archdiocese of New York. It's a fundraiser. And they always invite the two presidential nominees to this dinner. And the two nominees end up telling jokes. It's like a roast, and they make fun of themselves a little bit, but also of the other nominee. Kamala Harris, for the first time since Walter Mondale in 1984, snubbed the Al Smith dinner, decided not to show up. And Gaffigan was the MC. You remember?
Democrats have been telling us Trump's reelection is a threat to democracy. In fact, they were so concerned of this threat, they staged a coup, ousted their democratically elected incumbent, and installed Kamala Harris. In other words, all her dreams have come true. Really? It really makes you consider the power of prayer, right, Cardinal? Sometimes prayers take 3.5 years and a George Clooney op-ed.
Yeah, even Chuck Schumer laughed at that one because, well, he knew how true it was. That was Jim Gaffigan, and he had a lot of jokes that he told about Kamala Harris and about Donald Trump because it's comedy, and that's what you're supposed to do. And it's refreshing to see a comedian, a high-profile comedian, one that like sells out big theaters and has lots of Netflix specials. And I don't know if he's on Netflix, but he's got lots of specials. I think Amazon Prime actually is where you can see most of his specials. He's one of the higher end, very funny comedians out there, and he tells it like it is. He's actually saying, yeah, you know, I get pressure because I tell jokes about Democrats. That's bad. What the hell are we doing here? That said, he actually has some sympathy and concern over Trump supporters out there when he tells a joke. He also said on this podcast that he's often very sensitive that people think that when he tells a joke about Trump, that he's telling a joke about Trump supporters and voters and just everyday Americans. He addressed that as well. Fox News picked up this part of the podcast.
I regret that people think that I was criticizing people that support Trump. That was never the intention. It was, I regret I definitely, someone said like, now I can't follow you anymore. And I kind of said F you to them. There are true diehard Trump fans that, probably enjoyed my comedy that because they feel so passionately will never forgive me.
Yeah, listen, and I just like to say to my friends and followers and viewers of this show, I mean, you just heard me, they're all worth making fun of. They're all laughing. It's our right as American citizens to poke fun of and laugh at our leaders. I mean, we fought a revolution for that. You try making fun of King George III and see what happens. See how you felt from the neck up after that, okay? It's our birthright as Americans to make fun of our elected officials. In fact, I think it's our duty to do that. And it's true. A lot of Trump supporters, because we've been so beaten down, Republicans in general have been so beaten down by the entertainment industry and about stand-up comedians and by the corporate legacy propagandists in the media, that when we hear jokes, we feel so, on our heels, especially if it's somebody that we think is a friend, somebody who's on our side, who actually agrees with us and respects us. We got to stop being so sensitive about that. Listen, you can tell when somebody is being mean-spirited and hateful and rude and insulting, and when somebody is just trying to have fun and make a joke. And let's face it, Donald Trump, he's funny. There's a lot about Donald Trump that is worth laughing at. Yes, laughing at. That doesn't mean we don't take him seriously. That doesn't mean we don't respect him. It means, frankly, we respect him enough that we can have fun. You know why I know this? Because Donald Trump himself makes fun of himself. Look at the old clips of him when he hosted Saturday Night Live, back when he was, allowed to be on Saturday Night Live. Look at him at his own rallies when he jokes about his comb over and stuff like that. He gets it. He understands that this whole thing is kind of funny on the face of it. And right here on this program, like Jim Gaffigan, we're going to continue to find humor wherever it is. That's one thing we take in a bipartisan spirit. That said, there are about 99 out of 100 channels out there you could be watching that make fun of Trump and Republicans and you, good Americans who vote for them. And so when all is said and done, we consider ourselves equal time over here. We'll do our own daily show attacks on the left as much as possible because it's about time somebody did. That is a wrap. We made it through. Look at that. Angela, thank you for that $5 super chat. We love our super chats. It goes to the Big Mac Fund. DEI is on life support. California should pull the plug. Yeah, I don't think they have the wherewithal to do it, man. It's too big of an institution out there. Prayers for Americans impacted by the fires President Trump tried to prevent with common sense solutions. That's right. In fact, we couldn't get to this clip, but let's give you all who are watching the live stream a bonus clip. Shall we? Stand by, please. It's not a clip. It's just a tweet. Gavin Newsom refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him that would have allowed millions of gallons of water from excess rain and snowmelt from the north to flow daily into many parts of California, including the areas that are currently burning in a virtually apocalyptic way. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water. It didn't work, but didn't care about the people of California. Now the ultimate price is being paid. I will demand that the incompetent governor allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California. He is the blame for this. On top of it all, no water for fire hydrants, nor not firefighting planes. A true disaster. He's right. All right, Angela, $2 super chat. Lake and Riley bill should be unanimous. It is, again, as much as I love the fact that these Democrats are, hanging themselves with a ridiculous vote against it. I wish it were unanimous. I would be so much happier about the future of our country if something like that were unanimous. Well said. Angela, my God, you're very, very active today. $2 super chat is starting to respect John Fetterman. Who knew? Yeah, I got to tell you, how can you not have anything but respect for John Fetterman right now? Don't agree with him on everything, obviously. But listen, he's a senator in a very purple state that just went overwhelmingly Republican. He's up for re-election in 4 years. Maybe he's just being political and he sees the writing on the wall and he knows that he's got to lean to the right to be able to keep his incumbency and his re-election. But you know what? I don't care. I don't care. The proof is in the pudding. He's been a stalwart supporter of Israel and an outspoken critic of all of the pro-terrorist, pro-Hamas dirtbags that have been protesting on our college campuses, and good for him. And now it looks like he's going to do the right thing with his votes in the Senate on Trump's confirmations. That's great stuff. All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you watching today. Oh my gosh, we're so close to the inauguration. We're going to be getting all geared up and ready for all of our special programming that week. And we'll let you know exactly what we're going to be doing as soon as we know. But in the meantime, thanks for watching today. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.